Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reilly with another episode of Small Business Confidential, and with me are two younger fellows, my son, Brook Reilly. Brook, how you doing?
Doing pretty good.
And we got our younger guy, Clancy. Amari, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. How you doing?
Good. So I'm 68. Brook, soon to be 33, and Amari just turned 25. Am I correct with the ages?
Yep.
Okay. Well, here's what we're going to talk about. Find a job, create a job. Those are two very different things. And what prompted me to take a break from mentorship was an article in today's New York Times, and it is Thursday, April 28th. So go to that edition. And there is a story about how the young college-educated workforce that couldn't get a job in their fields ended up taking jobs at Amazon and Starbucks and other sort of millennium type temp jobs. And they are now at the taking the lead in forming unions in these companies. So, but what struck me was reading the stories of these young people, and I think all of us have experienced, well, especially you two have experienced people that have got their degrees and walk out and they can't find a job. And this is what happened to these people. So my first question is, we'll go around the horn starting with Brook, is without naming any names, stories of people you know that went to school, got a degree, came out, couldn't get a job.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the common story behind a lot of young people nowadays. You know, it's hard for me to pinpoint. I can think of a couple people where, you know, they got their degree, studied, did well in college, and now they're struggling to find a job. It's funny, I was watching last week one of my favorite movies, The Social Network, and there's that famous, it's not a famous line, but there's this really good scene where the Winklevoss twins are talking to the dean of their school, and the dean says that, you know, at Harvard, students are taught to create a job, not to find a job. So it's funny. It's ironic.
Really?
Watching that. Yeah.
That's what the dean said? Oh, I got to see that movie again. I don't remember that.
Because you know, they're talking about Mark Zuckerberg and how, hey, he left school, he created his own job, and that's what they're taught to do. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of young people nowadays, they just think that, you know, they go to college, they get good grades, and, you know, easy peasy, they find their dream job, and that's not the case. I think it's different if you're going into a line of work like, you know, like medical school, you know, if you're going to be a social worker. But I have a friend now who went in to study education. He was a principal for about 8 years. Then COVID hit, and he was like, screw this. I am done working in the education department. And he created his own job, or he created a role within a company where, less stress, maybe a little less amount of money, but he's happy. So I think that's just nowadays, especially with COVID. I mean, a lot of people are like, I'm going to find something that makes me happy or makes life a little less stressful.
Well, let me pick up on a couple threads, and then I'll flip it over to you, Amari, to answer the first question. But I think for my dad and his generation, and again, I'm 68, so my dad graduated from high school in 46. Then he went into the Marine Corps, was in the ROTC, was an officer, and they paid for his college. He was literally the first one in his family to go to college. When he came out in the 50s and you had a college degree, you could write your ticket in terms of getting a job. And I think that sort of carried over into the next generation, my generation, which, I don't know, college was getting a little bit diluted. It was the beginning of it becoming diluted because it was becoming more like grade 13, 14. It was an extension of high school as opposed to something that was more aspirational to go to college. And then, of course, now it's just come full circle. Hey, you've heard me, folks, rant about this in the last couple of podcasts, but college has become big business. College loans, tuition is just unbelievable how expensive it is compared to when I went to school. It's almost laughable how expensive it is. And most of the time, 50% drop out in the middle of college after 1 or 2 years without graduating. And the other ones graduate, and a lot of them with onerous student loans, and they can't get a job in the field they thought, or worse. And here's the kicker. They, like you said, Brooke, they will get a job, let's say a teacher, or they'll get a job as a social worker, and they will start the job and it's nothing like what they thought it would be. Suddenly you're dealing with all these customers, the Karens, the Kevins, these crazy people out there. And they got the job, but the old Chinese proverb, be careful what you wish for. And they hate the job, and they've got, 4 years of college bills plus 2 years of post-grad. All right, let's flip it back to you, Amari, your general thoughts, your friends out there. You're younger now, so you see some of your friends who've gone through college. How many people have actually finished college? And if they have finished college, did they get the job they thought they would get coming out?
So yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what you were just saying about be careful what you wish for. I think that's more like the kind of people I guess I know of that went to college. Is like they didn't even finish. They went maybe for like 1 or 2 years, something like that. Didn't really have like a longer term goal connected even to a job. It's just what you're supposed to do. So just kind of like mindlessly kind of going through all the processes and everything like that, thinking you're doing the right thing, which is, fine, but it wasn't really even connected to anything. So, maybe you're struggling from, I know some people who just like the culture of the school or whatever, they just weren't comfortable in, and you don't really have a goal connected to even like fight through that discomfort, and you're spending all this money. So it's like, why are you even here? At this place you don't want to be with no goal, spending all this money, and they just kind of end up leaving and getting a job here or there or whatever, and trying to figure it out from square one. And I think then it becomes like maybe a place of like, what do you want to do at that point that'll actually like bring you some kind of enjoyment or make you some kind of money that you can be satisfied with. But The couple people that I can think of that actually did finish college, off the top of my head, I think they did connect it to a job. Like I think I mentioned on the podcast before, my one guy, Connor, who he finished for software engineering and has a job in that. This one girl who I went to elementary school with, we were in the gifted program together. She, I think she went for like journalism or something like that. And she works at like MTV or something like that as like some creative director or programming or something like that. I'm not too sure on the specifics. So the couple of people who I can think of that did finish, you know, they were able to connect it to their job. But I know they were like both very like long-term thinkers, even at a young age. So it wasn't just like this is, I think there was like a aspect of this is what I'm supposed to do, but it was connected to an actual like goal that they wanted to do, versus a lot of other people.
That's a great point, Amari. And what struck me about listening to that answer is I think that the people that ended up with the job coming out of college had some sort of plan going in. This guy wanted to be a software engineer, or the girl, you know, she's from the gifted program. Education was a runway to where she wanted to be. I think people who fail going to college simply think, I'm just going to college. This is what I do when I'm 19, 20, 21. You know, I party, moving away from home. I'm having a good time. It's connected to nothing. And what's your thoughts on that, Brooke? I mean, you went to one of the ultimate party schools.
Yeah, I think that I would have loved to go back 10 years ago, knowing what I know now. I think college would be a whole different ball game. I think I keep going back to what I said originally. I think unless you know for sure that you want to go and be a doctor, or you want to be a teacher or a social worker, I think that college is, I think it's the logical next step. But I think if you don't know what you want to do, and if you don't know what to do, that is completely fine. Then taking some time to not declare a major, maybe you take a couple months off, you do some traveling, you work, do an internship, you know, get some life experience. You might come out of that and say, yeah, I don't really need to go to school.
Yeah, I agree.
Because at the end of the day, when you're applying for a job, you know, unless you're applying to a law firm or medical school, the boss isn't going to say, oh, I saw you got a B+ in your English class. Let's talk about that.
Right.
They're going to look at your job history, your references, maybe, well, a background check for sure. And they're probably just going to feel you out on some personal questions.
That's a great point, Brooke. And what I think about is, let's just say that you're applying for law school and you did not go to Harvard and Yale. Let's say you went to just Cleveland State, Marshall Law School. How about the fact that you didn't even go to law school, but you studied on your own, you were homeschooled, and you passed the bar? So you're licensed to practice law in Ohio, but you don't need to go to law school to take the bar exam. That's the irony of it is. So you walk in to this white shoe law firm, oak paneled, and you bring with you 3 Fortune 500 clients. Okay. Let's say you're doing some work for Steve Bezos on Amazon, or let's say you have acquired 6 very well rich clients that you have counseled them for. Now you're bringing this business into the law firm versus the guy that went to Yale Law School or let's say Michigan Law School, who's bringing in no business. Who do you think's going to get hired? I think door number one is the guy that gets hired. Okay.
Yeah.
Because come on, this is Small Business Confidential, right? The dirty little secret, the QT. What they don't tell you when you go to apply to law school is most firms have a limit to how many newbies, irregardless of what their GPA was, they're going to take on. But if you have somebody who is a natural born salesman who can make it rain, literally make it rain in that law firm, they will throw rose petals to hire you. Your thoughts, Amari?
If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just, the through line here is that aspect of what you're bringing actually being connected to whatever the goal is. You know, you're bringing in business, you're bringing in like built-in business, you know, somewhere, you know, you have leverage, you're adding value, you're making somebody else's life and job easier. You know, that's a lot more connected to the actual goal versus just like, I did everything that I should have done, you know, give me a job. I you know, it doesn't really work like that in the real world.
Well, what does the law firm want? Do they want A, somebody from a great law school, B, somebody from a mid-level law school with a 4.0 GPA, or C, somebody who's going to bring in constant billable hours? It is always C. They won't say that, but if they have a rainmaker, that's who they'll bring in. Brook?
Yeah, 100%.
And that applies to anybody. That applies to any job. The ability to create a client is what people want. And that goes to the title of this podcast. Do you find a job or do you create a job? And when you're going to college or high school AP courses that we talked about earlier, or college, nobody is teaching you how to be proactive in terms of creating a job. You know, the irony of it is that you can make an existing job that you're in better if you understand how to create that better job. And a lot of times it's understanding what your boss wants. I mean, what do they really want? And a lot of times they may not even know how to communicate that to you. But again, it's all about being proactive with life and work. And that is something that gets dulled when you go to college. The best college experience is always something that marries work-life experience, working your way through college. Maybe going to a college like Northeast, where it's 3 months of study, 3 months you're working at a company, 3 months of this, 3 months of working with the company. And Northeast is just a powerhouse in terms of the percentage of CEOs, C-suite people that come out of Northeast, is the ability to understand what the real world is like. And to your point, Brook, before you go to college, folks, take some time off. Take a year off. Maybe take 2 years off and then go back to school. But make that 2 years off something where you're going to be doing a true apprenticeship. Don't have to work at Starbucks. In fact, one guy said, I saw on CNBC yesterday, he said that his 2 years working at a bank as a bank teller, he learned so much about money just being a bank teller. Your thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, I think look, I went to college for a year and a half. And so I'm a little biased here, but I mean, the best learning experiences I've ever had is through different, mainly screw ups at work or screw ups just like in my life. I mean, those are the real learning moments, and you can apply it to your work. And you don't learn, at least I think, and I go through this with my soon to be wife, where she went to a really good school. She was an econ major or an econ minor. And when we were looking at our finances, she really struggled with managing her budget. And for me, where, there were moments where didn't have enough money in the bank, I'd get the notification that I'm over my limit. I mean, I still have nightmares about that from years ago. And I think life was a little different for me 9 years ago. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you can learn a lot more through life experiences than you can if you minor in something in college. Well, that's my opinion. And I have a feeling that, Mike, you would agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And I think when I start talking about college, people thinking like, well, you shouldn't go to college. That's not what I'm saying. There's got to be a reason why you go to college. You don't go to college to live away from your parents. I mean, you can do that a lot of ways for a lot less money. You could work, you could have an apartment, you can duplex with some people, whatever. And you can be far enough away, but not too far enough away, from your parents without racking up, big bills. But Amari, with your friends, if you scratch the surface, if you actually talk to them, you will find that when they went to college, there was an agenda. The other people who failed, who dropped out, who didn't get what they wanted, they thought that the mere fact that they were in college was that somehow they were going to get zapped in the brain and totally transformed. What's your thoughts?
No, absolutely. At least that's my perspective of it as someone who didn't go at all and has had a couple brief conversations with some people, It's just like having a good academic drive or focus or, whatever in high school doesn't necessarily mean, okay, let me just shoot straight into college with no plan, no real goals attached to anything specific. And then it'll just kind of figure itself out because this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right. And for Small Business Confidential, for a business, one of the words you have to be, or phrases you have to be very careful about is supposed to do. I'm 19, I'm supposed to go to college. I'm opening up a restaurant and I'm supposed to do X, Y, and Z. I'm supposed to take reservations without getting a credit card. And then they never show up. I'm supposed to be open till 11 o'clock. I'm supposed to do brunch on Sunday. I'm supposed to fill in the blank. Just think of the business and then ask yourself, I'm supposed to show up every day at the office as opposed to working remote. The supposed to is the buzzkill in life because you miss a lot of opportunity. You miss the changes that are going on all around you. And that's what happened with COVID. COVID just blew up the supposed to's because now, the rules are different. And you have actually companies now struggling with the fact that a lot of their workers don't want to come to the office where they're perfectly fine working where they are. What's your thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's, I think COVID you're seeing it in the housing market, job market, especially the job market, where this virus it's like a forest fire. I mean, it burned through so many old habits, old kind of systems in place, and now you're seeing the new growth coming up. A lot more working from home, Starbucks. I think too, like on Friday, it's hard for me to find a coffee shop to go to after 5 or 6 o'clock, because a lot of these coffee shops are like, none of our employees want to work past a certain time anymore. That's, a direct result of this virus really shaking up the routines and the systems.
Well, you may have more and more, I predict we're going to have more and more robotics, more and more automation. You may go to a coffee shop and maybe the owner's there, but everything's self-serve. Maybe they got robots, got music playing, but it's just one person. It's not one person at the counter. You put in your credit card and you get some tickets or tokens or whatever, and you go and you get the coffee from these different machines. Target is getting real big at that, more automation. Chipotle nailed their earnings on their earnings report because they're doing more and more digital drive-throughs for their food. And you're going to have more and more robots handling this. I think with people who, again, is supposed to, that are going through college, that are going in there without a plan, who are just smacked by reality, what's going on. If they had to go back in time, I think, I'm going to tee this up for you to answer, Amari. If you told them you are going to go to college, but don't expect to get a job when you're done. You're going to college to learn something you didn't learn before. I wonder how many people would go. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I think a lot of people would still go if you said that to them, for the experience, for, like you said, like wanting to get away, just because I think a lot of people's minds aren't open to, for me, it was kind of like, I just had a very simple way of thinking about it. It just didn't make sense. I never liked school. So it's like, I'm not gonna put myself in that environment to just kind of fail. But I still like to look at college as like a resource. Like, I like to go to their library. I had a mentorship at Case. I had other ways of kind of getting resources and experiences and stuff like that. So that was always how I like to think about things and go about things. So I think if you have that kind of more traditionalist mindset about it, it's hard to get out of that without being kind of going through more real life that kind of forces you out of that.
Yeah, but both of you have one thing in common, which is you're very inquisitive and you're always acquiring knowledge. Always. When you're done with work, Amari, you're working on your music, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's not like you're sitting on the couch passively watching reruns of TV shows, right? You're not doing that.
No.
And Brooke, you're watching documentaries. I mean, you're coming up with stuff. Hey, check this documentary out. Because there is an element of inquisitiveness and a relentless acquire of knowledge. So for people that are starting their own business or thinking of going to college, ask yourself one thing. What do you do every day to acquire knowledge? Do you read the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal? Do you know what's going on in the world? Are you reading a book, watching a documentary? Do you go to the art museum? Do you work out? What exactly do you do where you could say, these are the things I did today that was proactive? Your thoughts, Brooke?
Yeah, it's come to the point now where being proactive, learning about, I don't even see it as being proactive. I think I'm at the point now where it's just what I really like to do. I mean, I love watching documentaries. I like going on YouTube, looking up. I mean, there was a point where I was kind of went down this rabbit hole of creative ways to manage your personal finances, and that led to looking up stocks and IRAs and all that stuff. And then it all kind of connected to when I was like, oh, and then I remember I was watching a documentary on Warren Buffett. And then so it all kind of like looped around together. So it's cool. I can use those experiences, kind of my quote unquote, my hobbies, and translate it into work, or translate it, helping my siblings manage their money, or finding creative ways to save the company.
Yeah, it's exponential. What happens is the more you learn, the more you want to learn, and the more you start seeing connections that you didn't see before. So imagine that everything that you're out there acquiring knowledge for are little balls, big yellow balls. Okay. So if you learned 5 things, 10 things today, those are 10 balls that are in your head. And after a period of time, what happens is you start seeing connections you never would have seen, because connections and ideas come from taking one ball at the corner of the room. Let's say they're all piled up in this room. You're taking that one ball and you're seeing this ball next to your foot and you're saying, I can connect these two. I mean, I think about, shout out to Doug Katz, who had this great restaurant in Cleveland, Fire. And when COVID hit, he closed it and he started doing ghost kitchens. He started making connections. And then when, the vaccines came, things were opening up a little. He didn't go back to the conventional restaurant model. He was tweaking the takeout, the ghost kitchen, the special pop-up parties, et cetera, et cetera. And Amari, a lot of times, because you're really into music and you do all, the music themes for our podcast, but we'll end on this note, which is building those connections. Music is about, when we talk about riffing, just jamming, those are making connections, just pop in your head, but those are based on a body of work that's already in your head, right?
Right. And with music, it's so connected to what we're talking about, because especially being from Cleveland, there is no music industry in Cleveland. There is no label you can walk, to. There is no major studios where celebrities are constantly coming through and all this stuff.
Like Motown or the Brill Building or Tin Pan Alley, the historical. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, there's not, this is not the place for that. So a lot of what I had to do, and I'll have to travel and stuff like that, and I've done that before, but there's so much creating of these things, of these spaces, of studios, and there's so much just building from the ground up just because there's nothing here, and that can discourage some people and they can just give up at a certain point. But somebody like me that's inspirational to say, okay, this is like a blank canvas. There's a lot of possibilities here.
Right. Agreed. And I think, my final note and lesson for this episode, everybody out there, don't go to college or don't start your own business unless you know how to acquire knowledge. It's like you're about to run a marathon. You're about to play in the NFL. If you are not in shape, both spiritually and intellectually, you are wasting your time and your money. So acquiring knowledge, being proactive in your life is what you first have to be successful when you start anything new, college or a business. So we're going to end up on that note. Thanks, guys, for stepping into this podcast, and looking forward to what Amari comes up with his ads and his music. All right, Amari?
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Brooke.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. See you, everybody, next week.
All right.
Another episode. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Reilly. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.